everybody, we're out here for another video, and this is one that everybody really needs to pay attention to. This primitive basket fish trap that we're going to create today, made out of vines, is probably the single best method for consistently putting fish on the table time and time again. In fact, one of my instructors who works for the school actually, I kid you not, lived off nothing but this trap for over a year outside of a city in Oklahoma City. And he ate brim and bass and stuff like that almost every single day with this. And between his fish traps and wild edibles, he had no other need for any other types of meat. So basically what I'm going to do right now is go out and collect some vines and things like that, and we're going to throw this coil basket fish trap together and show you how it's done. Alright, so I'm going out right now. We're down by the river and we have crazy vines out here, and I mean, we've got poison ivy vines as big as my leg. It's like Jurassic Park as far as plants is concerned out here. Right now I'm going to harvest grapevines and some things like that, maybe even some iron vine. And this stuff pulls out of the tree fairly easily sometimes, and other times it'll get completely stuck and you can't hardly pull it out. But I can take one of these, and I pulled one down earlier, and it's thicker at the bottom, and then it gets you know, smaller towards the top, so we have all the different size type vines that we need here. And I'll probably pull maybe 10 of these down and we'll have enough for a basket. Alright, so after you get some of your vines cut, I usually cut them to approximately, depending on the size of the fish you're going after, we're going to build a real big one today. And it's better to have it a little bit longer than shorter because you can always trim it later. But put it on the ground, and it needs to be at least chest height, and then we'll trim this stuff off later. But basically you're going to lay these sticks out in a star pattern here on the ground, and you want them all stacked right on top of each other. Then you're going to take just a little piece of paracord, and you don't have to have paracord. It's actually very easy to do also with vines. It's the same way that you make you know, simple spoke baskets. But it's good, or it's nice for these larger baskets to be able to tie it all together. So all you're going to do is come in here, tie this top part together, leave a little bit of a loop, or not a loop, but a little hang-off end, so you got something to tie to here, and crank all this down, and then just wind it over, under, over and under, and just kind of tie it all together, because we're going to flex this up basically into a bowl shape and then start weaving the vine. Just want to make sure that all these are tied together well. Doesn't have to be in any kind of a pattern. It looks a little nicer when you do it with vines, but I like to make sure that this baby is held together initially, because these larger vines are a little bit more difficult to work with. And that's it. Then we're going to form it up. Alright, so you're going to start the base of the basket with a small vine, and it's very simple. You've got an even number of spokes all the way around right now, and after we get this first or second vine wrapped in, we're actually going to physically remove one of these because we're using an over-under technique, and you have to have an odd amount of spokes. If you do an even amount of spokes, you have to use the Japanese method, which is 2 over, 1 under. So you start right here, and this takes a while with these bigger vines until you start to really get it worked in there. And once the trap gets a little bit farther along, this will get really quick. But initially it's going to take a long time to get the base of it started. So pinch it with one hand, and then start pulling these through. Over, under, and you want to try to make them tight. You want your basket to be tight. Otherwise, small fish will be able to get in and out of it. We got a big thunderstorm rolling in. Hopefully we'll be good to go and won't get rained on. But you just start over, under, making sure to pull it in tight. And it's that simple, and we'll show you when I get a little bit farther along. All right, so it did pour on us. Here we are, we're sitting out here, hanging out in the rain under our Poncho Basha shelter here. We're in doing an advanced standard course, and this is what happens when it pours. So we're just going to wait this out and then work on the video some more for Primitive Basket Fish Trap. Alright, so we've been sitting out the rainstorm. It's stopped enough to get this project back on the road again. So this is a very important part of, so you need to pay attention. We've got an odd amount, or an even amount of spokes out here right now, but we need to have an odd amount of spokes, because if we don't, what'll happen is you'll have all overs and all unders on the same thing, and we need those to alternate. So we need an odd amount of spokes. So what we're going to do is just take one of the spokes after we've bound it really well with a smaller vine, and we're just going to cut it off. And that's it. And then once we take that spoke off, we just kind of compensate some of these other ones out, making sure that it's even all the way around. And then we're going to start with our vines with the over and under again. And we're just going to keep working our way up until we form a basket. So we're going to get the base formed. And an easy way to do that and help bring our sticks together is just to tie the top. You can either lash that with some vine, or you can just take a piece of paracord and tie it temporarily. Now that makes it a little bit difficult initially to be able to get the vines in and out. So we just coil them like you would a rope and weave them in or over, under, and bring them back through. And it's real important that your spacing, you start making sure that your spacing is good in between each one of these spokes. And once you get this base formed, this will actually form up on its own, and then you can release the paracord, and this stuff will stick straight up in the air. But we're going to need to get up to about right here with the vines before that we can do that. So we're going to get to that point, and then we'll come back. So I got the first, I don't know, foot of it, 10 inches of the base formed. And basically what that has done is allowed us to get this all formed up well enough to where we can cut this loose. And you don't have to tie it at the top, but initially it makes things a little bit easier getting it all formed up. So after you've tied it, you can see how it forms a little basket there. Now it's going to be much, much faster. It took us quite a while to get this little base formed. Once you get the base formed, the rest of this goes fast. Now keep in mind that you don't have to have really nice vines like this to make this kind of basket. You can do this with willow. I mean, there's a million different products that this can be made out of. So we're going to get the rest of this formed up and probably much higher before we come back. And hopefully we can get this baby knocked out in the next hour or so. But do keep in mind, this isn't a fast trap you're going to throw together in an hour or two. You're at least going to spend an afternoon on this.
Okay, what we have here is on our main frame of our basket trap. We were bending it and it broke off, but that's no problem. You don't have to start from the beginning. All you have to do is take another piece of vine and shove it down in here beside the first one. If you'll notice, it goes between the weave, just like we've been weaving everything through. And you just keep on going. And this will also work if you had a shorter basket and you wanted to extend it out. You just put these in and keep going. Okay, now what we have here is kind of an easier method of weaving the vines. We have it set up, a little bit higher here. That helps. We're rotating it around, and as we rotate it, you see we're just bending the main pieces, shifting the vine around it, and tucking it back down tight to make the weave nice and tight. That way none of your fish are going to get out.
Alright, so here's our basket trap. It's not completely done yet. We've got to put our funnel choke point in. But right now what we're doing is we're taking our leftover end pieces and we're going to go ahead and trim those out. Now there's a few different ways that you can do it. Probably one of the better ways, if you've got enough flex in your grapevine or whatever kind of vine you can bend them back over and actually fold them back in and do it like this. But we're not going to use that method because some of our pieces are big and we wanted chunky stuff so that it was real sturdy. So what we're going to do instead is take a few pieces of paracord and we're going to tie it on about the top 4 rungs of the vines, so that there's no way that the top rung can pop out in the future. And then we're just going to take this stuff and cut it off flush. And then after we get this stuff cut off and we get our paracord laced into it, we'll build our funnel point. So the first step when you're making your funnel choke point is to find a vine that's flexible enough so that you can have a decent sized hole. The size of the hole really depends on the type of fish you're going after. We're going after a bass and perch and things like that. You know, if you want to go for something a little bit bigger, then obviously the hole needs to be bigger. So we're just going to do like a constrictor style knot with a wrap around this, and just going to pull that back through the loop and then cinch these two together. And that helps bind it, and then just tie it with a square knot, a couple of square knots on top. And then take the ends and just trim those off. And we might even throw a little bit more paracord down towards these ends just to hold these together. All right, so the next step is, once you get this lashed together, you're going to take about 5 sticks, about pinky size, and in one side of them you need to make a notch so that when it sets into the actual hoop and you tie the cordage on it, it won't move around. It'll make it a little bit more secure. And you just lash it over in an X pattern. Now if you had bank line, some kind of tarred trot line, that would actually be the best thing for this, but all we had was paracord today. This can be done without it. It just makes it a lot easier and a lot more secure, because you're going to be removing this and taking it on and off quite a bit to get your fish in and out. So we're going to put 5 of these. Remember, when you're doing your over and under, you've got to always use an odd number of sticks. So we're going to put 3 more on there, and then we're going to start weaving this just like we did the rest of the basket. All right, so it's the same process with this. You got your 5 points, and the way that you start these baskets is you just pinch on one side, or you can jam it in and bend, and you just go in, out, in, and you got to make sure that these don't flare out too deep, otherwise it won't be right. And you just keep doing that, and make sure that you're cinching it down every once in a while, because this stuff will try to flare out on you. And you can use whatever it takes, out, in, and that's it. And I'm going to go all the way to the top, and then we'll cinch it into here, and it'll be a finished basket. All right, so the last step before we place it right in there is I just want to make sure that I cinch this down. I didn't have flexible enough spokes that are coming out to be able to bend back over. Sometimes you can bend them at extreme angles and then fold them back over on themselves, but honestly this method is going to be a little bit more secure, and this is going to be a permanent trap at our camp for us, so I want to make sure that it's pretty beefy. And you just basically take some paracord or whatever kind of line you got and cinch down these middle sections so that there's no chance that the paracord or the vines at the top will come loose. Just take that and run you a couple of square knots on it. And cinch it down. And just do that on every single corner all the way around. That way you know that this thing isn't going to come loose on you. And then after we do that, we're going to set that thing in, tie it off, and then it's ready to go catch some fish. Alright, so here's our finished product. Basically the fish swims in there. They're pretty much too stupid to find their way back out from the cone. You'll place some bait back here in the rear of the trap. And the cool thing about doing it with this method is I don't even necessarily, like I've got this tied off right here. I just unleash that, pull this out, and this is just kind of wedged in here so that when I want to collect my fish, all I do is take them up on shore and dump them out. And that's a primitive basket fish trap. And I'll tell you guys, bar none, this is probably one of the best ways to put food on the table when it comes to survival fishing or, you know, any kind of survival, period. Like I said, my instructor Josh actually lived off of a couple of these for over a year. He went kind of naked into the wilderness type thing. All he brought with him was a hunk of flint and lived out there for actually over 2 years. He came back the second time after the first year, and he brought a pot and pan with him because he got tired of cooking primitive. And you know, this was his favorite trap, and so we wanted to do a video on it today and show it to y'all so that we could share it to you. You know, if you've got any commentary, you know, please drop it, or if you've ever tried any of this stuff, and if you've got any kind of interest in, you know, doing this kind of wilderness self-reliance training where you can learn to live off the land, and you can live off the land well, I don't care what anybody says because we do it all the time. You want to come out and try this out, this is part of our advanced standard course, and, you know, hopefully we'll see you out of class. Thanks, and please help support us by subscribing.